Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Andrea Piero, Director of the Visiting Artist Program at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. It's my pleasure to welcome you to SAC's Distinguished Alumni Lecture Series featuring Emile Ferris. We're delighted to have Emile return to SAC, and I would like to thank her for taking the time to share her work with us and to reflect on her time studying at the school. Tonight's lecture kicks off SAC Alumni Reunion that officially begins on Thursday. Please join your peers along with faculty and staff at a variety of events and activities happening across campus throughout the weekend. This semi-annual Distinguished Alumni Lecture Series was established in 2006 in partnership with SAC's Office of Alumni Relations and has featured talented alumni such as Jeffrey Gibson, Chris Ware, Tanya Bruguera, and Sanford Biggers, among others. I'd like to thank my colleague, Ashley Spell, Executive Director of Alumni Relations, for her partnership on this series. At the end of the presentation, we'll have time to take a few questions from the audience before the program concludes at 7:30. Please raise your hand if you have a question, and our staff will circulate a microphone for your use. We ask that if you're posing a question to please stand and share your name and to keep your question concise. So thank you for joining us, and now I'd like to welcome to the podium Amy England, Associate Professor Adjunct in SAC's Writing Program, to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Hello? Can you hear me okay? Yes. I got to work with Emile Ferris a lot while she was studying here, and I think I got to know quite a bit about her. We talked about her growing up in Chicago in the 70s. I knew she had a deep and detailed affection for the city of Chicago. I knew that she had a great sense of the dark and the bizarre. She took my surrealism class twice, and that was a mindset that she seemed to be able to enter into with complete ease. I had seen her amazing artwork, much of which played with the line and the style of comics with great subtlety and invention. I knew that she combined a raucous and outrageous sense of humor with great compassion and interest in her fellow human beings. She wrote with a compelling voice, and she had a wonderful sense of how to engage in a genre and break its rules all at the same time. So, when she first started to bring in drafts of the book that became My Favorite Thing is Monsters, I could see where a lot of it was coming from. Very little was a surprise in itself. And yet, the force of a vehicle in which she was able to combine, for the first time that I had seen them, all of these things that I had listed at the same time, was still very surprising, like goosebumps level of surprising. The first clue that I got that those goosebumps were now universally experienced was a call from my brother-in-law. He had seen my name in the list of acknowledgments in My Favorite Thing is Monsters. That is the thing about me that impresses him the most. So thank you for that. Because he, like so many of us, loves this book. I am aware, however, that praise can be a kind of trap, that it can make the narrative of an artist's life seem like they work towards one inevitable project and then just keep doing that. And obviously, from that list, you can see that Emile has many choices about the directions that her work might go in. And more than anything, I wish for her the great freedom that she had when she started. So it is with great anticipation and a completely open mind that I am anticipating this talk. Thank you.
Wild thing, you make my heart sing. You make everything groovy. Wild thing. Wild thing, I think I love you. But but I wanna know for sure. So come on and hold me tight. I love you.
I'm live, I think. Oh, yeah, I am. Hey. Damn it. Thank you so damn much for coming out. Lord in heaven. Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. A lot of you I know, and some of you, I see so many faces that I know. It'll only be embarrassing later if I come up to you and I don't know you. But thank you. And I need these now. I didn't start at SAIC needing them, but then I did one day. This is weird. I might have to stand because this is just so, I just feel so far away from you. I have this thing, and I can't see you, and it feels bad. Okay, you know, I didn't write a bunch of stuff down. I was just going to kind of wing it a little bit. Sorry. That's so bad. But I do have pictures, so we're good with that. Let me see. What did I... let me just collect myself a little bit here. Yeah, there we go. This is what I'm going to do to you today. I'm going to do this monster thing to you. A little bit of monsters. There's always a little bit of monsters with me. And so there's all this stuff that I'll probably just range about. A whole bunch, you know, if you look at this guy, hey, I have this guy, it's so cool. I could torture a cat right now, but you see how the majority of him is actually digressions and asides? That's because that's what you have to look forward to. You know, tall tales. I will try to tell you the absolute truth. I will. But that's all I'm saying. Anyway, and then there's going to be some pseudoscience, because which I call magic, and musings, amusements, and museums. You know that all those words have muse as their basis, which of course you're all smart people and you knew that. You know, art stuff about monsters. The history of this silly book, you know, I shouldn't say that. This book. Karen would kill me. And naughty bits, which, you know, if you did not know me at all, you know there would be a few naughty bits, because I just think, and, you know, the naughty bits, you don't see them, but they're down there. Yeah, this is so hard. I'm so tempted to just come out here, but I can't. So I'm going to just, if I come away from this, am I making it so you can't film this properly? Somebody tell me. I'm okay? Okay, good. So you might wonder how a person like me ended up in this place, and I have a lot of stories to tell you about that. They start 58 years ago, because, you know, it takes monsters to make monsters, so there's monsters. And these are the monsters that actually made me, okay? And how did that all happen? Well, in my mother's famous words, she, from a small ranching town in New Mexico called Las Vegas, not the fancy Las Vegas, but the very unfancy Las Vegas, she grew up on a ranch, and she loved to draw. And so she beseeched her father to send her to the Art Institute of Chicago, and he made her create a program and a proposal, because he was a lawyer, and, you know, a small-town lawyer, and she did, and he consented, which is a big deal, because nobody ever went away in her family, but she did. My father was, well, if he hadn't become an artist, he would have been a mobster. And he was on his way, and he was the son of immigrant son of a furrier, grew up on 71st and Stony Island. He was a South Sider. That's what my father was. And he was a very brilliant draftsman. And what he used to do is that when his father would say, deliver the furs, there would be these big sheets of paper, and you'd wrap the furs in them before you took them and put them in a truck and delivered them to the wealthy people. And he would draw on those sheets of paper, and then, of course, fold them all up and hide them away. Well, one day, my father was always a very crass commercialist, and one day he, in military school, decided to make a few little, we call them 8-pagers, with Minnie and Mickey getting down, right? And he was using the school mimeograph machine, this is Morgan Park Academy, to run off a few of these and make some money. And one of them got stuck and found. And he got caught, and he was about to be expelled. And fortunately for him, he had a lot of friends whose fathers were the big boys in the mob. And he was already starting to do stuff for them. And his whole life hinged on the fact that an art teacher saw that 8-pager and thought, apparently, according to him, that he drew that penis very well. Mickey's penis was very realistic. And she said, give him to me. And that's what changed his whole life. And he became an artist. And he was a designer, and he designed all kinds of things, mostly in toys. I'm going to get emotional, so I'll try to not. He made the Mickey Mouse phone. That was one of his designs. He didn't do it on his own. He did it for a company, so he didn't make a lot of money, but he loved making toys. That was his thing, and he was a great draftsman. My mother is an amazing painter, surrealist painter. Just amazing. And her line, when she met this man, who was at that point very handsome in her eyes, and she just thought he was the best, she said, well, I'll stretch your canvases if, or rather, I'll clean your brushes if you stretch my canvas. And it worked. He stretched her canvas, and she cleaned his brushes, and ba-bum, here I am. And I was created somewhere, apparently, here. So this is my place. And it always was. There's a line of poetry in a poem I wrote called My Mother is 1968 Chicago. And in it I say, my father crosses the bridge to enter the Art Institute from behind, which was so him. And this is the entrance that we would come when we would come here when I was a kid. And we did so much. Here's another little, so you can see them. There's Mama and Daddy, and that's your Venn diagram, and I'm right in there somewhere, okay? But it's actually called the Vesica Piscis. There's my mother, who just was unbelievably beautiful, just an absolutely beautiful mother. I remember looking at her and thinking, you could be a movie star, you're just so damn beautiful. And Dad, who was just, all he was an eye. He loved to look. And the thing that my parents taught me that I want to convey to you is they taught me to be proud of their hunger. And sometimes their hungers led them into crazy places, and they did things that were not great, as we all do. But they always had affection and dignity around their hunger, and their hunger was always for art. And so the Vesica Piscis, this is a renamed thing. We call it a Venn diagram, but actually, I'm not sure if you know this. Some of you probably do, probably a lot of you. Here it is, and it is out of this that every shape in the world can be created. Every single one. And then you get this. This is the flower of life, this pattern. And if you look at our DNA, you will see that if you look at it the right way, don't look at it the wrong way, you will see that it is the flower of life is actually written into our DNA. And if you're Catholic, don't get upset, please, but hello. And and I was just in Europe, and I spent the whole time going, wow, okay, look at that. And it's because, everywhere you look, you're seeing the Vesica Piscis. You're seeing this. This is telling us something. We're under a blanket, I think, of misinformation about who we are. I don't think we realize that people from times past understood that we are not material and we are vibration. And we don't really understand that anymore. They also understood that we are larger than the confines of our bodies. Now, you might disagree with that. That's okay. You came here to hear me talk, and I'll tell you what I think. And if you have a talk, I'll come to your talk, and I will disagree with you. And I will say to you, I believe we're much bigger and much more powerful, and we come from somewhere else. And I will tell you that this all relates because there came a moment in my life when I was 40 years old, and I experienced paralysis, sudden, complete paralysis of my lower body from approximately right here all the way down. I won't tell you that story. But I had an epiphany, and I want to share that with you at some point. Here, Angoulême. I always say Angoulême, like a Chicagoan. And when I'm there, they say, okay, Angoulême. And I try so hard to pronounce French things correctly. But this is over the church. And there you see Jesus just coming out of the Vesica Piscis because he's coming from another world, right? And then all of his beautiful monster creatures that hang out with him. So I was there too, Angoulême, and I have to tell you, it was wild. I was really sick. I was so sick, I didn't enjoy it that much. Uh-oh. Wow, it got political. Anyway, so you see Jesus again doing his whole, hello, I'm coming out of the Vesica Piscis. What would that be? If that is the Vesica Piscis, what's that? Well, that's death. That's death. That is the grave, right? And I drew this for forthcoming material before I even knew that it was in the Vatican. I didn't know. And then one day, I was watching as our present president was being entertained in the Vatican, and I saw that there was the painting that I had admired, and he had been posed in front of that painting. And then I saw that, in fact, also other presidents had been there, and I thought, well, this is is the Vatican doing some kind of inside joke with us? Like, hello, are you playing with us here? I think you might be. And I didn't think you did that stuff, but, I should have known. So this is an interesting thing, I'll talk a little bit about sacred geometry and vibration, which I hope I'm sending you a vibration right now. I brought a singing bowl, but that's crazy. So I decided, don't go full woo. My daughter said to me, you're so woo. And at first I was like, wow, I bet that's a Chinese philosopher. And then I realized, no, it's not. Anyway, it's a gentleman named Nassim Haramein, who is a physicist who is advancing a unified field theory, which is very engaging, takes sound and resonates it through water, and it creates these amazing, amazing sacred geometry patterns that you're seeing here. Now, I was going to talk about a gentleman named, I think his name is Matsuo Emoto, and he works with water, and his experiments have been talked about in different ways. Some people really put a lot of stock in them, others don't. I enjoy them, and the reason I enjoy them is because what he's saying is that he takes water that's been damaged, that's dirty, that has been polluted, and he has Tibetan priests say words over this water. And then he looks at the water, and the water has changed structure. It looks more crystalline, which is what, there's a symmetry to clean water at the cellular level, and there's a jaggedness to dirty water. So what are we made out of? We're made out of water. And the words we say to ourselves, to our poor, precious selves, and the words we say to others, and the intention that we have, and the vibration we hold in our dealings with people, these things really matter. And we are powerful beyond anything we can understand. There is no reason to be afraid. So, anyway, let's go on here. Mama. And my friend Amy did not tell you a little bit about what she did for me, but if you read the book, you might know that she became Mama. And it is an irony that one of the most intellectually sophisticated people I know becomes one of the least intellectually sophisticated people I've ever written. But Mama has so much dimension that in forthcoming material you'll learn about. She is so much. And it's the thing that resonated for me was the space that people take up with their spirits. It doesn't mean that it's always filled with book learning, as Mama would say. It means sometimes that it's filled with other things that are really, really much more important. And I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but I guess I already did. So don't read the book now, you know how it comes out. Actually, it's going to get worse than that, because anyway, I'll probably tell you more spoilers. So that's me, and that's my parents, actually. They are both so wonderful. And my father, unfortunately, is no longer with us. My mother is, but... So that's me, and the thing that these two people didn't know, but they began to realize, is that as much as I grew, and I was a pretty big fat baby, as much as I grew, my feet didn't grow. They never grew past that. I really wish there was a cat here that I could be playing with while this is going on. They never grew. So by the time I became a year and a half to 2 years, I couldn't walk because they stayed the size of an infant's feet, which is weird. And nobody ever explained that, except when I was 6, I went to a doctor and he said, "Oh, you have severe scoliosis," which explained maybe. I don't really know. To this day, I don't know why my feet didn't grow. I can't explain that. But I didn't walk until I was 3, almost 3. And why does that matter? Well, I went backwards. That's why. I guess I am going backwards. Here we go. So here's my little word for you. I took a little baby notebook and I torqued the spine, which was kind of emotional for me to do because my spine was so torqued as a child. And I wrote this down for you because sometimes it is those things that you can't change that offer you the most miraculous possibility. So what happened to me was that I couldn't walk, so I sat and I started drawing because I had these wonderful art parents who said, well, she doesn't walk, so let's give her all of these things to draw and paint. So I had my little studio in the center of the living room, and I looked at everything. I wanted to draw everything in the world because I couldn't touch it, because I couldn't walk up to it and touch it like a kid does. You know that tactile experience you have when you're a child, when you can toddle to something and, you know, that thing that you see them do, and then they can, I never did that. Well, not never, I imagine. Eventually I must have. But, you know, during those formative times I didn't. So this is what changed my drawing. This is my theory. It's pseudoscience. I think when I'm drawing now, I'm actually touching. If I'm drawing your face, well, I'm touching it. In my mind, in my heart, I'm touching everything. So everything I draw has, or paint, has this feeling in it, this tactility in it for me. And I think it must be there for you too. So that is the magic. of my unique misfortune. And unfortunately, the walking wasn't great. I didn't skip. It took me until I was like 8 years old to learn how to skip. I was really working on it, though. I mean, there were so many things. So as time went by, the issue with the scoliosis got much worse. Now, I'm going to tell you a little truth. You read my book, so you know that Karen lives in this wonderful building. Well, I didn't. I did live in Uptown. I lived in this building, which was also wonderful, but for a different reason. This was, and we called it Buena, because we were just dumb that way. We didn't call it Buena, we called it Buena. Even Hispanic people called it Buena. I mean, that is, I don't know why, but that's what we did. And what was great about this place is here I am, this little kid that, I lived in New Mexico. I lived on 71st and Stone Island. I lived in these kind of communities that were all one thing. But when I came to this building, it was a low-income building. And it was full of people who, hey, you want to come and eat at my family's house? And I'd be like, okay. And then we'd sit on the floor and eat off of leaves with only one of our hands. This was magical shit. I was like, I'd walk into different people's houses and the food smelled completely different. And I'd find out that they were from some country in Africa that, they did things totally differently, or India, or South America. Or, there were people from all over the world in this building. And I went from one house to the other, making friends and experiencing their world, and it was great. Unfortunately, Karen lives here. It's not unfortunate. I mean, it's cool. It's got its good stuff. I did take the people here. Mr. Chug was a real person. Wasn't called Mr. Chug, but he was a guy, a ventriloquist, who would sit out front here on Saturday. If you ponied up a nickel and you said something nice about Nixon, had to do both, he would let you see his ventriloquist show. And, so there was just pretty much everything that is in this world came out of this world, but it's been changed, including a few things that I probably shouldn't tell you this. It's all being recorded. Okay, so I experienced my parents, both extremely brilliant in my opinion and very, challenged in their own lives. They had things they had to try to accomplish. And I just did this commonalities of monsters and artists. This was my first love affair. I was maybe 5 years old, and they had something called Creature Features. Do they still have that? No, they do? Oh, I should be watching it, but I don't have a TV yet. I'll get one of those someday. And I saw him, and I loved him. I just thought he was wonderful. And then, of course, spoilers, he dies in the end. And I remember weeping like I can't tell you, and I thought, well, why did they have to kill him? Why couldn't there have been another solution? I mean, why wouldn't the town have kept him and just made a place for him and kept him chained up when he was dangerous? But, I mean, why wouldn't they have done that? And that, to me, seemed like an enormous crime. And I kind of think the same about him. You know what I mean? Like, why didn't they take better care of him? Yeah, he spread some syphilis, I hear. But, I think I suddenly, I had all these art books, and I had my monsters, and I suddenly saw that artists and monsters were really sort of living in the same world. So they often work and hunt alone. We know that. They're often feared by conformists and other villager types. They often disappoint friends and family. How many of you have I disappointed? Do you want to raise your hands? Anyway, I'm out of touch. I fall into the book, and then I don't do things I should do. That's something that happens. Can challenge gender roles. Oh, yeah. Extreme self-doubt. Yeah. Sometimes wear cool clothes. Think about that. Like Dracula and David Bowie. Like, aren't they meant to be know each other? I think so. And then can lack business sense. Maybe you have business sense. I need an ounce of your blood. Instincts play a key role, historically have had tragic endings. Come on, right there. Fully committed to pursuits, passion can upset the social order without even trying. Resentment of social norms and ability to look into the darkness and see things. ferocity, hunger to manifest the unknown. And then you have a quote here from Salvador Dali. Once my appetite had been whetted, I became ravenously hungry. Yeah, that's just a great quote, I think. Okay, so here we go. Let's do some more. Wait, I went too far. Did I go too far? This was my first love affair painting. You know, like you have a painting that you fall in love with, and you can never look at a picture or you can look at a picture for a week and never think of it again. You can also look at the picture for a second and think of it all your life. This is the painting I think of probably every day of my life. My father, big, burly, essentially a mobster, but with so much delicious intelligence and deference for art and wisdom about it, but a kind of brusqueness so that people would think he was a truck driver and not an artist. Hey, go look at that painting right there. Just go on and look at that painting. See if you can figure out what's going on there. So I toddled towards this painting like a child toddles towards a rich uncle, thinking, oh, there's something here. And I see this, and right away, these women speak to me of this sorrow that's in my mother. She's not here, so I can tell you this. And I felt moved. But I knew there was something to this, and so, of course, looking harder, I realized that there are mermaids. Okay, well, there are mermaids, and then there are them. Oh. So they're all mermaids, right? And when I had that realization, it reflected on what I already began to see about my parents, about artists versus non-artists, people who wouldn't work in their lives creatively, who were simply engaged in consumerism, which I could see did not make people happy. But I could also see that artists were really coming up against it, that to remain an artist is difficult, and it is frustrating to go and do a job you hate, and know that your real work is at home, and you need the energy to do it, but you're so depleted by the time you get to it. And I kind of felt that this was talking about that. It was talking about women, and I saw that in my mother, that she had not, frankly, wanted to be a domestic. She had a wildness in her. I think, who is it that says a woman must need the soul of the devil to remain an artist? Well, it's true, and I know that. So that was my first crush painting, and then here's my next one, which you see was in the book. And this painting really helped me understand my father. And so and little spoiler, my father and Dee's are kind of like the same guy. And so there was this sense in this painting that I had the first realization that maybe you could look at anything and see the facets of a person's personality represented in different ways. And that's when I saw that the facets of my father definitely had dragon facets, and he had definite knight facets and definite princess facets, you know? So that was really helpful to me, and you see it in the book. And there is my representation. So when I'm drawing these characters, fiction is so wonderful because it embraces you, it opens its arms to you and says, do it any way you want, whatever you want, it's fine. I like to say, these things never happened, but the story is true. And then, holy shit, this motherfucker fell on me like, and I remember seeing it the first time and thinking, what has happened now? Everything changed. And apparently, Mary Shelley had the same response. This painting by Henri Fuseli actually changed her life and affected her, apparently. A copy of this painting hung in Freud's either office or study, apparently. And it does not surprise me, because this is so much about dreams. When I made this presentation, I was going to show you my dream journal, and I could show you a page spread, but I forgot completely. There was this great dream I had about about a taxidermied fox that I had on a bus with me. And all of a sudden, I realized it was like coming to life. And I was like, oh, that's got to be painful because I know they took all your insides out. And it was. He was having a lot of vomiting and diarrhea. And it was like, wow, I've got a fox now. But he's kind of dead. I've got a dead fox. But it was cool. And I felt when I saw this, just the way this guy is leering, and this guy is just I don't know. I won't tell you. He kind of reminded me of somebody. But anyway, you know what this says here, and you understand, but it was fantastic to see this painting. And it is in Detroit, and I'm going in a week to visit this painting, because I like to visit paintings. I don't know if they know I'm coming or anything, but I come. And it's at the Detroit Institute of Art. Isn't that incredible? Did you know that? Yeah, it's right here. And you know the bitches tried to sell everything away. They tried to get rid of Detroit's art. But Detroit is so fucking tough. Those people are tough. They said, take a hike. We're keeping our art. And they kept their art. I love Detroit. I love Detroit. And mentioning our girl Mary, of course she was what she was. She was, 18? And she changes the world? She basically really invents, if not invents, it's arguable, but invigorates and solidifies a genre entirely. One woman, very young, who had a tragic life, which, because I'm just, doing shit I'm doing, I got to do a piece about her in something called Noisemakers, which is this really cool magazine for girls, Kazoo, and they collected a bunch of comics people, and they had us do the lives of different very influential women, and I got to do Mary Shelley. And then there's that person over there. So this is me after, yeah, I know. Look at those arms. They were sticks. That's me after I came out of the body cast, which I received surgery at the age of 10 for the scoliosis, and I had a steel rod fused to my spine. Or at 8, I had been told I would die because my spine would run into my heart. I was told I would not live past 30. So, which I knew about Byron and all those guys, and I was like, so romantic, but I want to live. But anyway, I did live anyway. I got the operation, and so I'm about the age of Karen, right there. And that's why I'm showing you me and my Karen. And here's another big crush. Isn't she fucking gorgeous? She's just like... And okay, so the producer wanted to change the movie, Bride of Frankenstein, which is a great movie, by the way. If you can catch a movie, I think you're going to love it. I'm going to make some recommendations. And in the beginning, they wanted to cut the part out where Mary Shelley and Byron and Keats are, there's a big storm, and, I think it will. She's very cute, and I was in love. And I found out that you could be a writer and be female, which I had not known. Because when I was a kid, some of you will know this because you're my age, and some of you will not know, you got to be a little bit younger people, be patient with us old people, okay? We grew up really getting fucked, okay, by everything, like mind fucked. Okay, so let me explain this to you. I'm in kindergarten, and there are 2 stacks of papers. One stack is for the boys, and one stack is for the girls. Right now, this is bad. Okay, right at that point, bad. Because the stack for the girls is only this tall, and the stack for the boys is this tall. And these are coloring pages of all the things you can be. So for the girls, there's, nurse, teacher, mother, there was something else, secretary, I think. It was nurse, teacher, mother, secretary. That was it, I think. I don't think there were any others. And then for the boys, of course, it was everything else in the entire world. Fireman, president, doctor, writer, all of that over there. So writer wasn't in the pile, but this bitch wrote Frankenstein. So fuck you, Mrs. Connor. So there you go. And that's what the power of one producer who said, no, I think I want it to remain that we see that it's a woman that wrote this. One producer. One thing you do can change a whole fuckload of things. Am I okay? Yeah, I mean, there he is. And, you know, you would think she couldn't have done this, but Mary Shelley had been so severely rejected. There was a quote earlier. She had been so severely rejected by her stepmother, which is what I wrote about in Noisemakers. And that rejection had been so devastating. And that rage, the rage of having lost her mother at infancy and then having the only female person in her life not accept her, was, I think, part of what was wonderful about the book. It was infused. It was in the book. And here, gosh, she was just amazing. And there's me. And it says, it's terribly blurry, I'm sorry. I scanned it through the glass because by the age of about 14, I started challenging gender roles. And I knew I really, really liked girls more than, and I didn't know what that was because there was literally nothing that was out there to tell me about what that was. I had no way to describe it to myself. I had no words for that. And I knew that I had different feelings than everybody else. And I talked to a relative and they said, you'll embarrass your whole family. I thought I'd destroy the world. So, yeah. So when we are frustrating and stupid, younger people, this is why, okay? So you're living in a different world than we lived in, because from the time you were very little, you could describe yourselves, but a lot of us couldn't. And so feel bad for us. Bad enough not to bag on us when we're dumb shits, okay? When we're, okay, boomer, yeah, okay? Just take a look at that. And there's this big black space. Why did I make nothing? Well, because from about the age of 16, when I left home and was homeless, to about the age, I would say, when I had my daughter, I suffered with severe clinical depression to the point which everything was difficult for me. So if you're one of those people right here, right now, and you're thinking all of your life is going to be like that, no, just a lot of your life, probably. but it might get better. So hold the fuck on. Hold the fuck on. You do not know what's in store for you. Don't give up. Don't you fucking give up. I mean it. And then, bam! I had this amazing baby who right there looks like some creature on that Angoulême cathedral, but she is gorgeous, actually. And she, if you don't know this, is the model for Anka, because that's how beautiful she is. And I did not know what the hell I was doing. I was a single parent. I just did the best I could every single fucking day. I had a little journal where I wrote down what she ate every day. I mean, I just had to be sure, I had bad dreams where I would wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat because in the dream I hadn't fed her. And I'd forgotten for days on end. Being a parent was crazy and hard, and it is. And then being a single parent is just like, I don't even know. Don't do it if you can avoid it. If you're doing it right now, you deserve a blowjob or some other nice thing that would be like that, because it's really hard, and I know that. So then 6 years later, this is like me falling in 1,000 holes. I should just call that that's the name of the lecture. Emile fell in 1,000 holes and got out of them all so far. So my very beautiful daughter, who is not well represented by this tiny amoebic-looking cartoon, said, "Don't go to the party. It's going to be bad." She really did. I said, "Kitty, what do you know?" Oh, man, did she ever know. So I went to the party, and it was being held for me by friends. And that little fucker right there, Henry, he looks like a Henry, doesn't he? Sorry, if there's anybody named Henry, I am sorry. But truthfully, this little fucker bit me, and the bite turned black, like black. And I had all these weird feelings. Like, I felt like 1,000 electric flies were in my body, just buzzing all inside of me. It's a crazy, crazy feeling. And then lo and behold, this shit gets real. All of a sudden, I'm lying in a hospital bed. I wake up, I'm in a hospital bed. I do not know how I got there. I have no memory of it. And at some point, this situation occurs. And I am not kidding. Okay, here's what's wrong with this. I have been in love with the idea of the angel of death. You can imagine. I mean, I'm thinking Lycra. I'm thinking bat wings. I'm thinking, so cool, smoke. This fucker's gonna be awesome. It wasn't. It came to me as a 1940s file cabinet. And it just stood in the room and said these words, "For our records, we need to know if you are in or out." So fucked up. I was so cheated. I was not the experience I wanted. And yet I thought about this little person right here, and I thought, no, I'm not done. I'm not done. I got work to do. I was so close, because it looked so good. Because, when you're about to die, to those of you who I just told, hold on, put their fingers in your ears right now. You're not hearing this. It feels so seductive. I mean it, don't you? It feels seductive because there's this sense of being able to let go of something you're carrying that has become so heavy. And you all know exactly what I'm talking about. You know. We all have that moment where we think, this shit is just, oh man. And I didn't. And that's the thing I'm glad about. I said I'm in. Look at the good shit that happened. Yeah. Remember that when you're just about ready to point a loaded something at somebody or something else or whatever. So I found out, like it says, a physical therapist. I still remember him. He was so nice. He got all the way down. He had kind of sandy blonde hair. He was kind of like a boy band. He looked like somebody from a boy band. And he said, I have bad news for you. He made a little face like I broke your frog emblem thing, your frog soap holder in the bathroom. And it was actually, you're going to try to get up and find you can't walk. Shit, really? Yeah, you might have noticed that we keep coming in here and taking these pins and sticking them into your feet. No, I didn't. Yeah, that's the problem. You didn't. It didn't move at all. This is so not good. I know this is not good. Because this is not what you want. On so many levels, this is embarrassing and bad. And yet, there it was. And the pain didn't go away. I mean, the pain from West Nile virus, which is what I'd contracted, is unfucking believable. Is anybody here I don't want to out you if you're like, no, has anybody experienced this shit? Thank God not. It's crazy, though. It is like having raccoons gnawing on your legs. Not that I have anything, I don't know what it feels like to have actual raccoons gnawing on your legs. But it was bad, and it went on for a long time. And so then these wonderful people, not the toilet, these wonderful people stepped into my life and gave me a lot more hope and helped me. And, I'd been drawing toilets for those flyers that you get in the envelope where, do you know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about, like dry cleaning, it's like, and I would draw the toilet, or I would do shit like that. I did one Mexican restaurant magazine. I was so ill-suited to this work because at one point I got so frustrated I decided I wanted to have an iguana actually eating the food off the plate. You can find that illustration out there, and it's obscene. And it was so, I did it really well though, and so they couldn't say no, and they needed it. So they took it, and they ran it in the magazine. I don't know. Do you think people objected at some point? They might have. But I had the iguana, I think it was like a happy family at a cookout, and then there was an iguana. Anyway, so I did shit. And I couldn't do it anymore because here's the big news. I didn't tell you this part. And I will just put this down here like this. I was a sculptor too. And I would occasionally do little things for a company that subcontracted for Happy Meal toys. And I worked on the Mulan line and the line with the gods. I did some stuff like little spinners. I did the sculpting of the heads on the tops and stuff like that. So I was really dexterous, okay? So you can see, really dexterous. This was my weak hand. This hand, though, I'm not dexterous anymore. It's gone. I mean, it is really, it's a struggle to make it work. But the problem was when I woke up, it was like that. It was gone. I couldn't hold a pen in my hand. I could pick a pen up, and I couldn't hold it in my hand. Oh, fuck. That's it. See, for me, that was everything. For me, I could take everything that happened in my life, and a lot of bad shit had happened, but losing that, I thought, you hate me. You fucking hate me. I thought, how could I have lost this one thing I had? This is it. This is what I had. And this is gone. So I went to physical therapy and occupational therapy, and nobody really said they thought it was going to come back because it just was kind of like a club. Well, what happened is that little girl who is right there, that's her, that's my daughter, there was going to be a show, and it was going to be at the Evanston Arts Center, and it was going to have my father, my mother, and my brother, who's also a fantastic sculptor and painter and draftsperson, and myself. And there was some issue whether my daughter could be in the show. I wanted her to be in the show, and there was some issue about it, so I said, well, let's do a piece together. That way you have something in the show. The only thing is, I couldn't draw. And I sat at the drafting table, I wheeled up to the drafting table, and I just couldn't do it. And so this is the first thing I did with limited ability. It took probably 30 times more time than a drawing would have. And my daughter literally took a quill pen, and she took duct tape, and she duct taped it to my hand because I could move my arm. So you see it's kind of raw, the scratches are sort of raw, but she did that. She did that for me. And that was a great thing because I could draw again, such as it was. And then I drew myself a little chair, and I drew her a chair, and I said, why don't you draw us in these chairs? And she did. And here are all the golden boxes of love she drew for me, which are wonderful. And these guys sliding down. And there's still a little spinal curvature. They were only able to fix the lower part of my spine, so I still have some. And she drew me. She said, Mama, I can't draw you sitting all the way down because you're going to get out of that wheelchair. Nobody else said that. Nobody. The head of neurology at the University of Chicago said, plan for a life in a wheelchair. You're paralyzed so high up in your vertebrae, there's no way you could recover. If you were 8 years old, I've never seen anybody recover from this level of damage. So there we go. That little girl, she knew. She believed I could. So I worked like hell. And this is not triumphalism. If you're in a wheelchair or you know somebody who is, fuck, you don't have to walk. That's not the victory. The victory is fucking not giving up. No matter what shit you're going to go through. So then, this happened. I said, what am I going to do? I don't have any way to make a living. I didn't have anything. All I knew was to draw. I thought, well, I could write. I like writing. Not done it a lot. I mean, I had written for myself. I'd written all kinds of stories, but I'd never published anything. So I just got in a wheelchair, and I had an assistant at that time whose name was Christina. I said, would you help me go downtown? Because I think I'm going to try to go to the Art Institute. Because I'd never been to college, and I was 40 years old. And I decided, I'm going to do this. This will be, because then I'll learn computer animation. Oh, man, that turned out to be the worst thing in the world for me. Like, it was like, you have to not only, like, you have to blow the robot before the robot will let you do anything, okay? It's so, I'm sorry, but that's really what it felt like to me. Are you offended, computer animation people? I'm sorry if you are. But, I couldn't do it. I was too impatient. I'm like, I can make some shit happen here. Just let me, no, you have to do the thing and this thing. It was too much. But the writing was cool. And then this gentleman here, Chris Sullivan, taught me about animating in a way that I could animate, which is like really hands-on doing shit. And he's sitting next to Mary Cross, who was my first teacher in the writing program. I skipped I was like so old that I went to Roselle and Brown. I said, do you think you could let me into the thing? You're older, she said, and I have a certain sympathy for older people. And and then Calvin Reed, who was very dear, he said, don't tell anybody. And they let me, as a BFA person, I'm probably not supposed to be telling you this. I know I'm not. But here's the secret. Just keep asking for whatever the fuck you want in life. And just believe you can have everything you want. And just keep fucking asking. If you're the guy who is so, because I was that guy, I was so irritating to them that I think they finally just said, okay, just as long as you don't come back. And I got to take a class in the writing program and find out what that was like. And that ended up being kind of my salvation. And it was in all of these classes that I began to discover comics, which was a rediscovery. Now, if you've read something that I was involved in, how are we doing on time? God knows. What is that? What does that time even mean? Oh, bad. All right. I'll kind of hurry this up. You might have read something called Drawing Power. And I talked a little bit in that about something that had happened to me that was, hey, I mean, it's just like Hole City. I just fall in a hole, climb out of it. I fell in a big hole at the age of 8, which is the reason I think I had such severe clinical depression. And that was that I was sexually abused by an uncle very badly. And the world went from day to night in an hour. And I'm telling you this not, it's very, people talk a lot about these things, but if you're somebody who is living with the legacy from that, and you don't have to be, you can be male, you can be female, because I know it happens all over the place. It is devastating, and I know you know this. And climbing out of that hole is a life endeavor. Whatever the fuck you do, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you because it is so hard to climb out of that hole. It changes the actual wiring of your brain. So, this is something that I was dealing with. And the bad thing, and now I'm spoiling this whole thing, I was watching Mr. Magoo while it happened. And I blamed Mr. Magoo. That fucker couldn't even see what was going on. I blamed him, and I blamed cartoons. They felt not nice anymore. And I was away from them for years. So at the age of 40-something, I start thinking about cartoons again. They just kept coming into my work, and art teachers, some of you here probably, would say, kind of cartoony, huh? Kind of like the church lady. I won't mention, if I see you, I won't say a word, but you would be like, yeah, that's right. And now I'm damn proud of it. So I did a lot of stealing. How do you just come right out with that, Emile? Well, I can now, because they like me in France. And they would understand. They just would, because they went through the Vichy years. But I started working on, you did a great thing for me, SAIC, many great things. I mean, this was the best experience in my life. I just kept staying here, and I loved it. And so to those of you who are educators here, thank you, you make life. And to those of you who are students here, oh, I'm so glad for you. Take advantage of everything you've got here and make something big, because you're in probably the most esteemed and wonderful art school in the world. Really is a fantastic school. And so I left here and I won this little award. It was a big award for me. It was a lot of money. I got a call and I got the Toby Devin Lewis, which meant that I could take some time and develop this 24 pages that I had worked on as my thesis, which was the beginning of My Favorite Thing is Monsters. And while I was doing that, I had to live on very, very little. So the story of the book is that it got auctioned to a woman who said, "Do we really need Martin Luther King in this?" And she was wonderful. The wonderful thing about her is that she's a brilliant woman. She didn't really understand the book in some ways, I think, but she is brilliant. And she was very supportive. And that was only just a thing she thought in the moment, because I don't think she understood how important that was to the 60s. So she supported me, and she gave me a big amount of money to work on it for 4 years, which I took that money, and I lived very frugally until the point where I had nothing and was stealing bank coffee, which is what you see right there, where I would go in with a pot and, just crank the bank coffee and walk out, and they couldn't do anything about it. They didn't like it, but what could they do? So there you are. And then I got evicted during that time, and everything went to shit. Everything went to absolute shit. But I kept working on the book. And you know what the best thing you can do in your lives is say no. No is the most wonderful word for an artist. Say no a fuckload. When you're working on that stuff that is really important to you, say no to things that aren't that stuff. I passed up some big opportunities, and people were happy that they did the things I didn't do while I was working on the book. But, I was working on the book. I had to finish it. You have to be serious about your work. You have to remain committed to it no matter what. Oh, there we go. And so, then, hole number 77. How much time do we have for the whole story? The book was lost at sea. The book was printed, and this never happens, and the book was lost at sea. So I had been evicted, and I was living on nothing, but I was sure that my book was going to come through for me, and it was going to be all good. And then I got a call. Well, actually, we've hired detectives, because we think pirates have your book. What fucking world am I in? Is this CERN that did this to everything? What fucking world am I in that pirates have my book? Pirates, arg, matey, it's a fine book, you know what I mean? Really? Are you kidding me? No, but it was real. Because what happened is that the shipping company had gone bankrupt. And the ship was on the sea. So it didn't have a port to land in. And that was that. They left it in Panama. And so if you have a first edition, it has a slight ripple to it, because it spent 2 weeks on the water, just sort of sitting there. And I thought, maybe I'm going to be the most famous graphic novelist in Panama. Everybody, even babies will have a copy of my book, right? And everybody will use it for different things. It'll be oh, the book, get the book, And then they found it, thankfully. And here's remember when I said embrace the magic of your unique misfortunes? This was a big misfortune. And yet, what the fuck happened? Everybody got curious about this book that was hey, did you hear about that book? Oh, this was wonderful. And my publishing, Jack Cohen at Fantagraphics is kind of a genius, and she said, we're going to use this. And she did. And so I was at Miami, and I had come in, and I was literally doing this. I was stealing hors d'oeuvres. I was with a friend of mine named Kurt, and we were just like, okay, if you go right, you're going to have him. And we were like, because we came there with a bag of pecans. And because I was stupid and didn't know anything, I didn't know you got $100 when you walked in the door. So I was just like stealing all the hors d'oeuvres. And then, I better look on the time thing here. Then I met this dude here. Oh, is that bad? Yeah, that's probably bad. I met this dude here. I just sat down at a picnic table. And I was like so afraid because I had such a mound of hors d'oeuvres that I'd stolen. And somebody said, "Who are you?" And I was like, oh shit. We're going to get kicked out of this place for like clearing the trays. And it was one person talked to another person, talked to another person, and the person on the end was Art Spiegelman. And then he reached out and took my hand, okay, this hand, and he said, "I really liked your book." Wow. That was fucking crazy. Yeah. And then I got up and I said, "It was very nice to meet you, Mr. Spiegelman, but now I must hug an octopus. Bye." And then I dived in, because it was right there by the pier. I dived in. No, it didn't really happen that way. But I figured, I liked how he says, "the Art Spiegelman." like that, like he would know. Okay, we're going to have to hurry up. This is me, and, I've raced forward to, Paris. Because recently, and I'm just trying to seduce you guys who are quasi-suicidal. This is Paris, and this was a residency at the freaking Louvre. Here's a kid who is living in that house, 833 Buena, and has books. I have books, and I have all these paintings at the Louvre. And all of a sudden, I'm there. I'm able to be there all the time, not all night. I would have liked that, but they didn't let me stay all night. And draw, and just draw all the paintings. It's fucking great. And what's next? I don't even know. There's me holding forth, and I still can't pronounce Giotto. Giotto? Art people. Giotto? Giotto. Okay. Yeah, that's what they were doing to me, and I was like, I'm lucky I'm not saying Giotto. Wait, did I do that right? And there's me, once again, talking. I had people who I got to talk to, who came, and I did workshops at the freaking Louvre. I got to go around. That painting, awesome painting. I've got to move on here, but I'll tell you a little bit about that painting. That's me, once again, holding forth. This is we have a gorgeous little painting here. We have a great St. George and the Dragon painting. This is an Andromeda by, Perseus and Andromeda by Joachim Vedeville. And I love that monster so much. And one of my assignments for isn't he great? Yeah, he's just so cool. He's so much cooler than Perseus. And sexy. And there's me, and I'm drawing myself as that monster. And it was really fun. Everybody got to draw themselves as different kind of creatures and so forth. I have to speed along here because I just held forth forever. Just a monster I threw in because I thought he was great. I don't know who painted him, and I should, but he's gorgeous. And then this painting. And I wanted to spend a lot of time and talk to you. How much time? What time is it? Okay. Ang, right? Did I say it correctly? Ang. See, I didn't even say it. I was being corrected in France the whole time I was there. They're like, "We love you, don't talk." It was so bad. That was so bad. And he was this painting is gorgeous. And what I think about this, I just want to really quickly say to you, Karen can kind of say it pretty well for me here. Maybe Karen can say it. That's a drawing I did from the actual painting, and I'm turning it into comics, which I'm not sure he would approve of, but, you're dead, so you don't get to... Don't get to do anything about that. Okay, so Dees showed me a picture of the Sphinx asking Oedipus a riddle that went, what creature has only one voice and yet is 4-footed, 2-footed, and then later 3-footed? And he says, the answer is a human who crawls on all fours and da, da, da. So is the riddle meant to make me see that I'm a strange creature just like you? Because, to be honest, I'm scared of the part of me that is you. And she says, oh, you stupid villager, of course you're scared, because the part of you that is me is a much bigger part of you than you think. That's why you poor, weak mortals have to tell stories about outwitting and killing us monsters over and over again in all your myths. And I hope it ended up more like this. Ultimately, that's my hope, you know? And I think it should have, because she's hot! And he's, you know, Perseus, but I'll forgive him. It just kind of irritates me. And this is why, you know, or not, he's Oedipus, rather. He's a Perseus type. But I didn't know, this is at the Uffizi, and I did not know that this was actually, after all this, the things I'd seen it, I didn't realize that it was an actual breastplate. And there it is, and it's just so gorgeous, and she is just so fucking gorgeous. And I love her so much. And there's the asshole. And I mean, what is it? You know, you go to somebody's house and like, can you imagine what it is to be Medusa? Like, she has not been in touch with people too much because they tend to like turn to stone. So there's this moment when somebody actually sees her, and it's got to be the most potent moment because she is lonely and she's watching them and she's saying, and then they're turning and she can never connect. And why don't we ever think about that part of the story? We just think about the triumphalism of, oh, he killed the monster. But what was the monster? The monster wasn't a monster. She was a goddess once in Libya. She'd been a supreme goddess, and the Greeks demoted her. Anyway, I won't get onto the ancient Greeks right now, but I could. Yeah, that bitch. I'm sorry, but you know. And I think our business should be to reattach all the heads. You know? Reattach the heads. I started this drawing in front of an audience in Lucca, Italy. And I haven't finished it yet. It's still pretty much where it was. But I love the idea of reattaching the heads. The heads of those of us who have experienced sexual abuse. The heads of those of us who have dealt with depression. The heads of those of us who have been marginalized by, you know, racism and sexism. I like this idea of reattaching ourselves to our consciousness, to our vibration, to our power. I think we have to be invested in that, and these days more than ever. And so there you go. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and kill a Perseus. But, you know, it's kind of cool, I have to say. And so what did I do in Paris? I drew people who sit in cafes. And I experienced the whole lot of time where the metro wasn't running because, you know, they weren't getting fairly treated, and so there was no transportation. And people just, the French are completely able to sacrifice and generally have a solidarity with other people sacrificing for their rights, which is very cool. And we could take a page out of that book. And we may need to. So a lot of being in cafes and lots of protests. I mean, I remember I went to Sennelier store and all of a sudden explosions because they were shooting tear gas canisters, and it was wild. And yet these people, at that point, there were the Gilets jaunes. I'm pronouncing that correctly. The Gilets jaunes, but even they have, despite racial issues that are permeating every country in the world, pretty much it seems right now, there are real reasons why people are protesting. The recent moves to destroy their pensioning or to change it in a really radical way, they won't cotton to, and I support them. But then we see, we have to think about the villager mentality. The monsters are not the problem. The villagers are the problem. Villager mentality is a racist mentality. It is a sexist mentality. And I don't mean some small person in a nice little village in southern France. I used to feel really weird when I would say that, and people would be like, my mother's a villager. And I don't mean your mom. I mean these people, okay? In Bride of Frankenstein. I mean them, who are so ready to go and chase the other. Just like Perseus, they don't realize they are the other. Everybody's a monster. That's just it. There are no monsters. We are the monsters. And if you don't believe that, you end up with that shit. And if you don't believe that, and you're not paying attention, you end up with this shit. We are the monsters. And these people don't realize that they're powerful. They've signed on for a bill of goods because they feel unempowered, but they are powerful. If they knew how powerful, they wouldn't sign up for this shit. They wouldn't need anybody to define them. It takes balls to define yourself. And you artists, you fucking understand that. And where does it go? It just gets worse. So what do we have to be? I'm supposed to wrap up this talk, and I don't even know what's the next thing. Yeah, vibration. It just comes back to that, and it comes back to that, and it comes back to that, and it comes back to that. What you do when you make art. You know, when I'm making my work now, I feel that the world, Karen's world, has accreted a substance because you have lent your beautiful imaginations to it. It doesn't exist, and yet it does. You've been there. You've been there. That's the magic. We are magicians. I wore this witch's hat for a reason, to tell you, you are magic. Magic nation. Imagination. That is what we have to be, now more than ever. Do not think for 1 minute, because you're not out protesting, that you aren't supporting the cause of life. That energy you create, that vibration you create when you make art or do anything creatively, feed your family, plan a wedding, decorate the house, take care of your dog or your cat, water your plants, love people. That shit is powerful. We have been under a blanket, and we've been enveloped in a lie. Television tells us to be afraid. Turn off that fucker. It tells you that you're getting old. It tells you that you have hemorrhoids. It tells you all this shit all the time. It's suggesting things. That's why they call it programming. It is programming you. Don't accept it. Don't accept the news that says be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just fucking don't be afraid. If you read the Bible, that's the first thing angels see when they meet people. Don't be afraid. I mean, of course, because they're covered in eyes and they got wings and claws. They're terrifying, okay? Sorry, I shouldn't have used that example. But the point I'm making is your vibration matters. And the energy you produce when you make your work matters. It really does. And explore your spirit. Keep a dream journal. Keep thinking about who you are. Be invested in yourself. Champion yourself. You're wonderful. You are magic. You are capable of doing things that you don't even know about. And you are not just this body. You are so much more. Your boundaries are much greater than the size of your body. Just remember that when things get scary, and they get scary all the time these days, don't they? And there is a reason. You are here right now, born into this time for a reason. You came here for a reason. You are here in this dark time now because you had the strength to be. That's what I was going to tell you. I didn't tell you, I forgot, but I remembered. There was a moment when I said, how the fuck could I do this life? And I had a vision. I was paralyzed. I was smelling my diaper because I couldn't do what people do anymore. My daughter was coming in, and I couldn't talk for at least 2 weeks after I came out of the fever. I couldn't communicate with her. And I asked myself, why the fuck is this happening to me? And then I realized, I said to myself, what if I saw all this before I came here? And I was strong enough to have chosen it. What if you were strong enough to have chosen to be here now? And there's a reason why. We need you. We need everyone, and we're all connected. Be the strongest you can be. Be the truest you can be. Be you. You're magic. And I love you so much for being here tonight, and I wish the very best for you. So I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, maybe, thank you. I love you all. Thank you. You can ask some questions. Listen, I'm going to say this to you, okay? The thing where everybody's really quiet for like 4 minutes after the question, it's like, just ask a goddamn question. Don't make me feel like such a chump up here. Okay, that's good. That's really good. I like that.
Sure. I'm a student at SAIC, and I also see a lot of my fellow classmates here. And I just wanted to know how you made the most of your time here and what you did directly after graduating.
Wow, that's a great question. Try to go to the museum. You see, it's really hard because you have all these assignments and these hoops that you have to jump through, and I know that. Try to draw back your vital energy and keep it for your projects as much as possible, or try to dovetail your projects with assignments, which can mean that you're bringing in something that does not fit the assignment at all. Sorry, teachers, I just told. But really, you have to be on your team. If you've got a project you're working on, just freaking find a way to keep working on that and feed it. And if you can find a teacher that can feed it, and you will, because there's so many brilliant people, brilliant artists who are working artists and teachers here, who can help you feed it. There's so many generous people. They will, too, help you feed that project. I say go to the museum as much as you can. Go to the lectures. Spend time in that great library. That library is so freaking awesome. It is, I guess, a legacy library for somebody who died or something. Flaxman, but it's brilliant. And I would do all those things. And I would also keep a record. I came up here and Andrea said she's going to share her time here, and I thought, I don't even have a freaking picture of my time here. I can draw you mental pictures, but that's it. And so I'd say document your experience here for yourself. Yeah, all of that. And afterwards, okay, I'm going to say something bad. And those of you who are administrators at SAIC are going to be like, get out. But I really wish it worked like this. There are a lot of people who come to the school and they have support. Let's just put it that way. They have financial support. And that's great. And then there are some people who come here and they have nothing. Nothing. They got their aunt to agree to help them, and everybody else in the house, whenever they come by, says, you're going to be unemployed. Those are the strong ones who have staked a claim for their art. Like my mother and my father, essentially, although he got a scholarship, so he's a lucky dude. But if only the Art Institute made it so that they withheld a little bit of your money and gave you a grant at the end of your time here to have some time to work on a project so that you didn't go directly from working at Blick to not understanding why you can't pay your loans, you need a little blank at a time. And it would be fabulous if they could do that. Just 10 grand. And look, there's a lot of money that's flowing around here. 10 grand is not too much. Seed money. You want the most successful group of graduating students. These people here are badass, brilliant bitches. Give them $10,000, they will start businesses. Because I got that, and it made the difference for me, and I think everybody should have it. I want you to. I want you to, you know? So, all right, yeah, and so who's gonna, I'm gonna have dinner with somebody who might not be happy with me for saying that, but I mean, oh no, she's laughing. So she's gonna be cool. She's cool, she's cool. Anyway, any other questions?
Okay, I just want to tell you how important this talk was to me. I'm a monster. Thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
I write about things, and I'm a monster, and you are now. I mean, obviously you don't know me, but in my group of favorite people, and I'm going to be reading everything. And my question is, outside of I just love your work. Oh my goodness gracious, sakes alive. I'm in the performance department, and I'm primarily a writer. How do you deal with it when someone looks at you and says, yeah, you are a monster, and it's not good? That happened to me today, and I'm just broken, and I figured I'd ask you.
Well, I mean, everybody's got to project. I mean, if I think about everybody, they're in their own, unit. It's almost like, they're in their own self-driving car kind of unit thing, and they're talking to themselves. Like, when I go to a signing, I'm not there. The people who come to see me at a signing come to meet themselves. They come to meet some externalized version of themselves that's going to tell them something they need to hear. And I could be an asshole, I could be, that maybe is who I could be if they needed an asshole. But, people just are talking to themselves.
Thank you.
Is this on? I'm kind of loud. Thank you for this talk. It was and for all the care that you put into, and for your words of inspiration. I had a question about the and I love magic and woo-woo, so I'm wondering if we can go into a little bit us being not just our bodies, but vibrations. Does it have to do with the water that we're made of, or is it more? Can you share a little of your magical wisdom with us?
Wow, that's a tall order. Just a bit. Yeah. In my guesstimation, I'm not. Disclaimer. As much as you might have thought I was a physicist after this talk. I'm not, so I don't really know fucking anything. But I have guesses. I have guesses about how we manifest. I think we're under an enormous blanket of fear, and that we live under it all the time. And I think that is what we're talking about when they talk about fall from grace. I think that we're so powerful that we're really not supposed to know how powerful we are. Now, I don't know whether that means, I also think this other crazy fucking thing. I think that everything you really believe is true. I think you'll find that out when we die. We find out that what we believed was true. That means I might have Jesus and Ganesh. I might have, trees. I love trees. I think they're very godly. I found out recently they have heartbeats. Somebody told me that. I don't know if it's just a Facebook meme. But I believe it. So they do. I don't know. I'm probably the worst person to ask that question. How does it actually work? That DNA that is actually the flower of life. I have a feeling that everything, and we are all connected. I'll get real with you. The earth is alive. It is a living entity. And we are part of it. We just keep going down into it and coming up out of it, and going down into it and coming up out of it. Here's the big danger. When people start talking, hey guys, you want to enter the singularity? Say no. That shit is bad. Warning, bad. It's going to come down to witches versus robots. Sorry, I know. And it's such a drag. But here's the thing, and this is what I wanted to talk about, I never got there. Frankenstein. We're going to be dealing with Frankenstein. We made Frankenstein. It's called AI. And we don't know if it loves us yet. We don't even know if it wants to love us. We don't even know if it wants to be like us. We better hope it fucking does. Because if it doesn't, we're shit out of luck. You know? That was not what you wanted, was it? I'm sorry. I just went full on Ray Bradbury, and you wanted Oprah or something, and I didn't do it. And I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. Okay. Sure.
We have time to take one more question.
I dare not. Dare I? Okay. Okay.
I was just wondering, you work with Baltic pens. Doesn't your hand ache horribly after a drawing like that? When I use Baltic
Sometimes.
pens, I'm in agony afterwards. I don't know, how do you handle it?
Well, now you're going to see the part of me that's Jewish, okay? I do it for you. I do it. I don't know you, but I love you. I do it for you. And I'm in pain. But I'm sorry. Anyway, or Catholic. Could have been. I have both. I've got both, so I could really roll it out for you. Are we done then?
There was a question right here in the aisle.
I just want to say, I do believe in the interconnectedness of the universe. Also, I met you when you were in a wheelchair in your mother's artist studio.
Oh, my
in
gosh.
Evanston Art Center.
Ah.
You came to visit when you and your daughter and she were doing the generational show.
Right.
And I saw that show. And it had a great impact on me. And then I read about your resurfacing in a newspaper in Colorado, which I never read a newspaper there, but I was kind of blown away by, and so happy to hear about your success. And I own your book, and my daughter
Thank
gave
you.
it to me. I am really happy to see what a beautiful person you have become, because I had no idea what you were really like personally, or how you were connected to your mother and father, and I appreciated the work that your mother did. But I just want to say,
What's your name?
it really means a lot to me
Oh.
to hear and see you.
Okay. Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that, person. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
We're out of time. Thank you so much, Neil.
Oh, you're very welcome. Andrea, wait a second. Up there. So, can we have some applause for the amazing people the Alexes and the Jeffs and the Andrea? And my amazing introducer, I'm not going to blind anybody. Where is she? My Amy. Hey, there she is. Blind you right there. Thank you. And thank you, you guys who stayed a bit longer and asked questions. Thank you very much.